Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Heading to Preschool with an IEP with our presenters, Kelsey Biswanger, Esmina Hamzagic, and Victoria Martinez. My name is Chris Somerville. I'm part of the information and referral staff here at Michigan Alliance for Families. Before we jump into our presentation, I'd like to share a few items from our website. This is where you can find the PowerPoint and other resources for today's session. I will be posting them in the chat as well. You have a minute or two to view or print this before the presentation starts. If you're not familiar with us, this is our website, MichiganAllianceForFamilies.org. We provide free information and support for children and young adults birth to age 26 to receive or may be eligible to receive special education services. The work of Michigan Alliance for Families is done on a regional basis. If you call our 1-800 number up here at the top of the screen, you'll be directly connected with your parent mentor that covers your part of the state. You can also find the information here under regions. We have this cool interactive map. You can click your region of the state that you live in, and that will also directly connect you with that parent mentor that covers your part of the state, knows your local schools and your local resources. You can also find the information here under staff directory as well. We have all of the MOF staff listed here, including all of our parent mentors. We do have many partners that we work with across the state, and you can find those here under our partner resource list. These next tabs show some of our most popular topics. Our A to Z list is an awesome way to navigate the site with all kinds of great information here. You can also use the search bar as well to find that easy information. The videos page here, this is where we house many of our previously recorded presentations that we've offered. We've been adding more content to it recently, so there's constantly more videos popping up on there. We do have many upcoming virtual learning opportunities available, and you can find those here under our upcoming events page. Up at the top of the page, we have our social media icon for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We really encourage you to follow those. This is our icon for YouTube. This is another place where we house many of those previously recorded presentations as well. This last icon is our sign up for monthly e-newsletters and events notifications. This is the best way to keep up to date with Michigan Alliance for Families. And then last, before we get started real quick, I just have a few things to go over about our platform, which is Zoom that we're using today. We do ask that you please stay muted unless you're directly called upon. You may use the chat feature to ask questions during the presentation. We'll try our best to answer those as they come in. And then if we don't get to them, if we do have time at the end, we would be happy to discuss those as well. If you'd like to turn on the closed captions, please click the live transcript button, then select show subtitles. Please feel free to private message me with any technical issues that you might have during the presentation. I'd be happy to help. Like I said, I will be sharing a link to the handouts. I will also be sharing a link to a short survey at the end of the presentation. All of the work of Michigan Alliance for Families is provided at no cost, thanks to our grant funding, but we do have to report back, and those surveys allow us to do that. They also improve the work that we do. I would love to present or welcome our first presenter, Kelsey Biswanger.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kelsey, and I am the Regional Parent Mentor for Livingston County and Central Oakland County. I'm going on my second year with Michigan Alliance for Families, and I have 2 elementary-age daughters. My youngest has been receiving special education services since she left the NICU when she was 6 weeks old, and now she's actually entering first grade with an IEP. We did move a few years ago, so our family has worked with 2 different special education departments in each of those 2 separate districts. And as is the case with all of our parent mentors at Michigan Alliance for Families, we do live in the areas we cover. So my family resides in Oakland County. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Esmina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Esmina Hamzagic, and I am the parent mentor for Central Western Kent County. And I have actually been with Michigan Alliance for Families since March of this year. I have 2 boys, ages 4 and 2, and my oldest is the one who has an IEP. and will be going into his second year of preschool in the Caledonia School District. I unfortunately did not know about Michigan Alliance for Families prior to being a parent mentor. However, it's a resource that I wish I had known about when we were new to the special education system. Like most new parents new to the special education system, I felt very overwhelmed. Victoria?
My name is Victoria Martinez. I am the Early On Liaison with Michigan Alliance for Families, as well as the assistant to our director. I've been with Michigan Alliance for Families since 2019. I was previously the regional parent mentor for Southern Wayne County, and I still live in Southern Wayne County. I have 3 children. They're 13, 10, and then a new baby who's 8 months old. They're keeping me on my toes, especially now that we're all home in the summer. We're very excited for back to school. My daughter asks 3 times a day. She is 13 and she is my family member with a disability who receives special education services. She was born with Down syndrome and she started services at 3 months old with Early On. And I've worked with math before when she was about 8, not as an employee, but with my regional parent mentor. And that's how I became familiar with the services. And my parent mentor helped me get into a lot of parent leadership opportunities in my area and then eventually across the state. I do wish that I would have been introduced to Early On though, or to Michigan Alliance for Families when I started Early On though. I think that would have helped my understanding sooner to be more proactive. Today we're gonna, discuss many different topics throughout our time together, and we only have a short hour. So we created a resource guide that you can take with you, and Chris is going to go ahead and put that in the chat now. And then he'll share it again at the end of our presentation as well. We're going to move on to the agenda and show you all what we're talking about today. We're going to cover the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA, some key components of IDEA for preschool students with special education services, what an individual education plan or IEP is, and then Kelsey, you want to explain a little bit more about what we're going to cover?
Yeah, we're also going to speak a bit about the different preschool options, inclusion in preschool, and what that looks like, and then the importance of the least restrictive environment.
And then lastly, we're going to talk about who to talk to when there are concerns, building a community around education, and then the role of Michigan Alliance for Families.
So I want to ask you all, by a show of hands, there should be a raise hand option. Who all here is familiar with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act? Chris, how many do we
Victoria,
have?
it looks like about half of our viewers are familiar with it.
Thank you for sharing. Well, for those of you that are unfamiliar with it, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a law that makes available a free, appropriate public education excuse me, eligible children with disabilities throughout the nation and ensures special education and related services to those children who are eligible.
Thanks, Victoria. All 3 of us had children who attended preschool with an IEP, and that was our first introduction to IDEA. My daughter attended an early childhood special education, or otherwise known as ECSE, classroom through our local school district for 2 years. During this time, her OT and PT services were pull out. So that means she was taken into a separate room to work on those goals. For her last year of ECSE, she was still in the ECSE program, but her needs had changed, so her placement had changed. At that time, she attended a blended classroom that included kids with and without IEPs. It was co-taught by a general education and an early special education teacher. And the services that she received there, so speech, OT, social work, were push in. So the providers worked with her in that classroom.
My son started receiving early on services at age 2 and then transitioned to ECSE when he was 3 and will be attending ECSE again this fall with the plan for fully inclusive kindergarten next fall. Initially, we wanted him to be in a fully inclusive classroom, but we knew that it would be a lot harder for him to adjust just because he had never been in a daycare or a school setting before. So when the school year ended this past June, we knew that we made the right decision because BCSC had a smaller classroom size and it wasn't overwhelming for him. Remember, what works for our family may not work for yours.
Thank you all for sharing your children's experience. My daughter transitioned from early on services to preschool, and it was through our Great Start Readiness program in our area. And her services were push-in from the local school district. Those push-in services she received were speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. The service providers that worked with her came into the Great Start Readiness program building, worked directly with her in the classroom, and also helped her classroom teachers with options that would continue providing the support that she needed in that classroom with them not being there. Chris, can we move to the next slide, please? So one part of IDEA called Section 619 is the funding services for preschooler. And with this money, most states offer preschool, special education preschool services to kids 3 to 5 who might need it. Your child may qualify under the Section 619, but I wanted to highlight some of the key elements of IDEA for preschoolers. One of them being a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. Child find system, which is the responsibilities of the school to find children who may be eligible to receive special education services in their local area. The Individual Education Program, or IEP. Least Restrictive Environment, or LRE. And parent participation. Parent participation means that parents have the right to participate in the meetings with respect to their children's identification, their evaluation, their placement within the IEP, the provision of FAPE, which is that free appropriate public education. Excuse me. And this also includes the right to participate in the IEP meetings, to develop them, to review them, to revise them, and be a part of the group that's going to decide whether the child is a child with a disability and may be eligible to receive special education and related services under IDEA. The IEP team, which is the one who develops and reviews those plans that we talked about, the program, as well as any group that makes decisions related to their placement when they're talking about the IEP. Most of the time, those decisions are made within the IEP team meeting, and that is. Lastly, we wanted to tell you that the last key component that we're going to talk about is the procedural safeguards. Those are the rights that any person who interacts with their federal, state, or local government have that protect them in those interactions. Next slide, please. Most of you might be familiar with an Individual Family Service Plan, or IFSP, if your child received early intervention services, but I know that a refresher can always be helpful. An Individual Family Service Plan, or IFSP, is a written plan for providing early intervention services to any infant or toddler with a disability and the infant or toddler's family that are eligible for those services. And that information, that might include information about the child's present level, which is in 5 different domains. It might include information about the family and their resources, what their concerns are. It'll include the results or outcomes that they're looking to get for that child, the services that'll be provided, the location, frequency, intensity, and method of those services, as well as when they'll start and when they'll stop. And then the projected date of the services, when they'll, as a whole, when they'll start and when the new IFSP meeting will be. And then those services should be implemented as soon as possible, especially once the parent has consented for those services and the IFSP is obtained. And they should be developed in accordance with the rules in IDEA.
Early On is designed for children from birth up to age 3. As part of that IFSP process, a transition plan is then created to make the transition from early on to preschool. Your transition plan will include ways to help your child be ready for these changes. Where the child goes and what they do after early on is an individualized team decision. This planning must start at least 90 days and no more than 6 months before your child's 3rd birthday. But you can always have conversations about the transition whenever you are ready. Most families transition from early on to ECSE when their child turns 3, but some families start a little before age 3. This was the case for our family since our daughter has an October birthday, but the ECSE preschool class started in late August.
So we too transitioned from early on to ECSC. However, we were given the option of starting in January when my son turned 3, but we waited until the fall for him to start so that he could get into the routine with everyone else.
My daughter started before her 3rd birthday. Her birthday's in December, and we wanted her to start that GSRP classroom when everybody else did in the fall. So in her transition plan, we had it set up where she would start in September with everyone else. Chris, can you go on to the next slide? So if you're not familiar with an individual education program, that is a written document for a child with a disability that outlines the child's educational needs and goals and services that the school will provide to help that child make educational progress. The IEP is developed, reviewed, and revised by the IEP team, and the IEP has many parts. They should all be individualized to meet the needs of that student that the IEP is for. The 4 major parts of an IEP are the present levels of academic achievement, the goals and objectives, related programs and services, and accommodations and modifications. If you are not very familiar with these and you're interested in learning more about these in depth, please check out our learning opportunity called IEP A Closer Look. And you can find that, as Chris shared, on our website under upcoming events. So just like the IEP is individualized, an IEP team is individualized as well. Your team will look different than any other child's team and may not include all of these individuals. Some of these individuals can include teachers, service providers, early childhood special education directors, and we'll go into more detail on this in a little bit. But remember, as the parent, you're always the expert and an equal member of that IEP team. I want to ask another question. If you haven't, lower your hand so we can go ahead and ask you to raise it again. By a show of hands, how many of you had started the conversations about transitioning to preschool? And then Chris will let us know.
It looks like we only have a few people that have started talking about that transition.
Okay, well, I hope that after today's presentation, we'll give you the tools that you need to start those conversations if you haven't already. So we're going to move on to talk about the free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. FAPE for every student. Chris, can you switch to the next slide, please? FAPE is different for every student, and it includes the options that allow the student access and services to be able to receive their education and progress. This includes any services such as speech, occupational therapy, aids, transportation, and many other services are on the table, depending on what the child needs. Kelsey, I want to know what options were offered to your child to provide FAPE.
Yeah. So my daughter attended preschool in early childhood special education, ECSE classroom. And during her time there, she received speech, OT, PT, and social supports. We also actually worked with transportation, and we had that included in her IEP. So she started taking the bus and working on that actually long before her 3rd birthday. And we made that a goal so we could get ready for that. We wanted to make sure she could do it safely. So we worked with a PT to make sure she could easily go up and down the steps because she hadn't been walking for that long when she started preschool. We also worked with the transportation team to make sure that she had the appropriate harness so she could remain safe and secure and wasn't wandering around the bus. And the team actually even scheduled a test run with our entire family to introduce her to the bus driver that she'd be working with and make sure that she, and also us, were comfortable during that transition. Additionally, one year we actually had her take the bus from the early childhood special education classroom to a private daycare. So we made sure that that worked too.
Thank you for sharing. Esmina, how did your offer of FAPE for your child differ from Kelsey's?
So we were actually offered transportation last year, but our family declined because we lived so close to the school. And then we also we wanted the option to be able to talk to the staff after school was over. However, this year we did choose to have the bus pick him up in the morning, and then we would pick him up for school, just so that we have that direct contact with teachers after school is over. We were also offered other services such as speech, physical therapy, and occupational therapy.
Thank you for sharing. Chris, could you go to the next slide, please? So we mentioned procedural safeguards and IEPs and IFSPs and IDEA, and those are a lot of acronyms, but they all have some very important meanings. I'm going to mention another one now. We have the State Performance Plan, and it's also known as the SPP. And this is how the state and federal Office of Special Education holds school districts and ISDs accountable for special education services and outcomes. They achieve this with that State Performance Plan, or SPP. It measures a lot of different things, and you can find it on our website if you're interested. But I wanted to highlight the main things for preschool, because there are a few that are most important for preschool. One being indicator 6, you can see on the screen. It's early childhood educational environments for children ages 3 to 5. And this measures the percent of children with an IEP that are 3 to 5 in a regular early childhood program, in a separate program, and then a separate school or residential facility. We also have indicator 7, which is preschool outcomes. This measures the percentage of preschool children with an IEP who have demonstrated that their skills have improved positively with social emotional skills, acquisition and use of knowledge, as well as uses of appropriate behaviors. And then the last one that I want to really highlight is indicator 8, and that's facilitated parent involvement. Parent involvement is so important, and so they want to make sure that it's measured to make sure that parents are being involved in these discussions and conversations. This indicator measures the percentage of parents with a child that receive special education services who report that the schools facilitated parental involvement. This indicator is achieved by a family survey that's sent out on behalf of Michigan Department of Education, or MDE, from Wayne State University, and it starts when your child begins education, and you'll get it every 3 years. So if you're in early on or received early on services, you might have gotten one of those surveys yearly. But when you transition to Part B services, which is 3 through 26 in the state of Michigan, you'll get those surveys every 3 years. So if you get a survey from Wayne State, don't throw it away. It's not trash, I promise. It's really important to have your parent voice heard at the state level. Chris, next slide, please. So I want to let you all know, for those who have started the preschool conversation, I want to see if you would type in the chat if you're willing to, and let us know what options are being discussed for your children in the IEP team meetings. And then Chris will go ahead and read off a few of those options.
It looks like the only option that was presented to a few of our attendees today was the option for ECSE.
Thank you for sharing. And we think that's why it's so important to highlight the three of us. We have such different offers of FAPE. So it's pretty important to know that that's not the only option.
We had
Yeah.
another attendee that also said that last year the administration said their daughter was 50-50 for ECSE or ancillary services.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Chris. And, as we talked about earlier, there are different preschool settings available to your family. What environment worked best for my daughter was different from the options that work for Esmina and Victoria's children. And in our case, the best preschool setting also changed as our daughter grew older and her needs evolved. So what we want to remember is that where a student with a disability receives special education and related services is an IEP team decision. And as a parent, you're part of that IEP team. IDEA requires placement in the least restrictive environment, or LRE, for each child, a setting that's based on that child's IEP.
So the setting that Kelsey was talking about, or placement, as it is often referred to, should be discussed and reviewed by the IEP team at least annually. This could mean special education is provided through walk-in services, a private preschool, a blended classroom, a special education classroom, an off-site location, Great Start, early Head Start, or something different. More information about these different preschool settings and placement options can be found in the resources guide, which is linked in this chat. Next slide, Chris. So using the raise hand feature, who here knows what the least restrictive environment is?
It looks like it's about half their group, just like IDEA was.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So it's important to remember that special education is not a place, and the preschool setting should be what is best for the child at the time of the IEP. When we have this discussion with the team, we want to think about high quality inclusion and the least restrictive environment, LRE. LRE refers to the setting where a child with a disability can receive an appropriate education designed to meet his or her educational needs alongside peers without disabilities to the maximum extent appropriate.
Yeah, and high quality inclusion in early education supports children's development, their relationship with their peers, and a sense of belonging, which is true for children with and without disabilities. Not only do children with disabilities benefit from being included in early education, but children without disabilities also have positive developmental outcomes in inclusive environments. In Michigan, similar to most of the United States, the majority of young students with disabilities are not being educated with their typical peers. And different statewide work groups, including the Preschool Inclusion Collective Action Plan and the Path Forward Strategic Action Plan, have identified specific actions that would result in preschools having more inclusive experiences. And you can find information on those also on our website as well.
Yeah, and in our resource guide. So something that we want to share is that the research shows that inclusion benefits everyone. So it benefits children with disabilities. Research shows that there are gains across all areas of development, higher level social skills, improved peer relationships, and benefits for children regardless of the nature, type, or severity of their disability. Inclusion also benefits children without disabilities. And that research shows that there are gains with greater cognitive and language skills, higher level of empathy skills, advanced social skills, stronger peer relationships developed, and that these students achieve an awareness, respect, and an understanding of diverse abilities. These inclusive classrooms tend to be of higher quality in general, so all the children are benefit. But it's not just the children. The inclusion benefits educators and systems too. So in an inclusive classroom, we are better able to assess children's needs and identify barriers. And there's a greater access to professional development, early intervention practitioners, special education specialists, therapists, and other colleagues who really bring fresh perspectives and innovative teaching techniques. Chris, can you bring us to the next slide, please? Thank you. So on the screen is a diagram of different placement options for preschool. If you look at the top, you'll notice that the top is general education, and this is going to be our least restrictive environment. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see a residential placement or a separate school. This is going to be considered our most restrictive environment.
So as you can see on the screen, right under special education eligibility determination, which is that black rectangle, you can see there's a gen ed preschool with supplementary aids and services. This could be a local preschool offered by a school district, a Great Start Readiness program, or other setting that is for all students, where students with an IEP can still receive their individualized services outlined in their IEP. As I mentioned previously, my daughter went to a GSRP classroom, and the local school district came to this building to push in services as outlined in IEP. And as you go further down the pyramid from the top, it gets more restrictive, as Kelsey said. You'll see under the Gen Ed preschool and blended preschool classroom that a separate ECSE, Early Childhood Special Education Self-Contained classroom is outlined. This classroom might be in a building with other non-disabled students, or it could be in a completely separate building. The most important piece of the conversation that you want to have is that there are still options for inclusion for your child to the maximum extent appropriate.
So as mentioned in the previous slides, it's important to remember when looking at this diagram, we want to remember that LRE isn't a place. It's a principle that guides a child's education program, and it may look different for each child because each child is unique. Each year, the team should have a conversation on placement, starting at the LRE, or least restrictive environment, and general education environment, and determine the placement or the appropriate education designed to meet his or her educational needs. That is, alongside it with peers without disabilities to the maximum extent appropriate. Special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment should only occur if the nature or severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily.
As a parent and as the IEP team member that knows your child best, do not be afraid to question or challenge the recommended placement. You can ask the team questions about access to high quality inclusion and the LRE. You can remind the team that special education is not a place, and you can ask them if they have a creative solution that may work for your child. You can also ask them what these environments look like. You can print out this sheet of paper, you can bring it in with this map, it's on our resource guide, and ask them, what does these options look like at each of these levels for my child? Chris, could you bring us to the next slide, please?
So now we're going to be talking about who to talk to when you have a concern. Some of these are decision makers, and we talked about how an IEP is individualized and made for each individual child. This is the same with who may be involved in your child's IEP. Your child's IEP and key players will look different depending on what services your child needs. Some of the key players that may be part of your child's IEP are general education teachers, special education teachers, and related service providers. These can include a speech therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, and social worker. Oftentimes, the principal will also attend the IEP meetings. One thing that I like to include in our IEP is a one-pager about my son. These usually include his likes and dislikes, his strengths and weaknesses, what works for us at home and what doesn't. And I usually bring this to our IEP meetings and at our open house so that the key players can learn more about my son and reference back to it when needed. The next one is contact information. So making sure that you have contact information for all these key players is super important. I usually like to have at least an email address for my son's key players, and I like to have everything done through email or text message so that I have it in writing if I ever need to refer back to it. Superintendent and principal contact information should be on the school's website. And then lastly, best means of communication for you. This is usually agreed upon between you and the key players. Find a way to communicate that works for all of you. We like to communicate with our therapists at least monthly. I like to send out an email to the therapist asking for an update. And then also when I pick up my son from school and then I have the opportunity to talk to the therapist and teachers then too. Next slide, Chris.
I'm going to stop and interrupt real quick because we did have a question, and I'm going to go back to it. It was on the pyramid here. We had a question about the pyramid, and does it show that push-in services are least restrictive as compared to pull-out? In other words, does the green represent the pull-out services and blue represent push-in?
So while that might not be specific on this map, there is more guidance on our website for that. I said map, but this image just outlines the classroom placement, not the services that are pushed in or pulled out. I hope that answers your question. Chris, I see that we also had in the chat a question about least restrictive environment and preschool and the requirements of least restrictive environment before kindergarten. I'm going to share a Dear Colleague letter in the chat with everyone for more information on preschool inclusion. It's a great resource.
Thanks, Victoria. So this is the one pager that I did for my son. It's just another great way to communicate what works for your child with the key players. It also gives them a glimpse of how they can better support your child in the classroom setting.
This is a great idea, Esmina. We do something similar to this for our family too. It's also a wonderful thing to continue beyond ECSE. So when your student transitions to elementary school and the team sometimes grows a bit larger, this information captured in this page is a great reference for everyone who works with your child. It can be shared with the bus driver, the music teacher, the school principal, maybe someone in the cafeteria, just everyone who interacts.
Yeah, and I have also found it helpful. My daughter's now in middle school, so she's quite older than Esmina and Kelsey's children. But I continue to use these, and I use a different format every year, the older she gets. So now that she's older, hers is just a simple Microsoft Word document that I create using some bullet points with her picture on it, stating her strengths, her weaknesses, similar to what is on the screen here, but in a format that is more mature, because teenagers don't like cute stuff like this anymore. We want to ask, what have you done that works for your family as a way to introduce your child to their team? We a lot of times took this document to back to school night, and when we toured the building, our daughter would show us everywhere, and we would go to the lunchroom, and we would go to the different classrooms and pass these out. I would carry like 20 of them in a folder. Say, oh, you know, Eliana, here. Hi, you know, Eliana, here you go. Because she's very social and says hi to everybody that she passes in the hallway. So if you could go ahead and share those things in the chat with us now, that would be great. And Chris will acknowledge some of those responses.
I think everybody's being a little shy.
No shyness. Come share with us. We see you're here. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe the answer is that you haven't thought about this as a way to share things with your school team, or maybe you just call them, or maybe you go to back to school night and you talk to people individually. Share with us, please. That's what we're here for.
So we have one person that makes an about me photo book, and then her daughter gets to share the pictures.
That's a great idea. If you haven't done anything like this before, but you like the idea, Chris will put a link in the chat for our website that discusses using a child snapshot. Next slide, Chris, please. So now we're going to be talking about building your community. As a parent of a child with a disability, I know how hard it is to find people you can connect to and who can understand what you're going through. It's important for us as parents to have a community who supports us. So one of these communities is your local ARC, and the ARC promotes and protects human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and actively supports their full inclusion and participation in the community throughout their lifetimes. The ARC also has chapters all over Michigan, and on their website, you can find your local ARC and connect with them. The ARC can help you connect with a network. They have events that members are invited to, and they have resources for families with disabilities. They will also be able to guide you to specific organizations such as social events in your county. The next one is your local community mental health agency. They will have additional resources for families such as individual and family counseling, parent support, and care coordination. And then lastly, we have your local ISD, and they're also able to provide you your local resources.
Your Parent Advisory Committee, or PAC, PAC, can also be a great part of your community. Every county has a PAC. Some school districts have their own special education parent advisory committees, or CPACs. These groups will be aware of services and initiatives that are in the schools, and they also value the parent voice and input. The PAC is made up of local families, and these PAC representatives are a great community resource for things that aren't necessarily related to special education. So where the family may go for a haircut, if there's any sensory family events coming up, or maybe even a dentist who has experience working with individuals with disabilities. The PAC is definitely a good place to go. Chris, can you bring us to the next slide, please?
Really quick before he does that, I want to go back to building community. We did mention those local things, and if you're already a part of those, I would like to really suggest that you look for statewide community building opportunities as well. And you can talk to your parent mentor about doing that. Sorry, now we can move on.
So by a show of hands, how many of you have used Michigan Alliance for Families resource in the past? It could be talking with your parent mentor, attending a learning opportunity, or maybe browsing our website.
It's like about a third of our group is familiar with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. So Michigan Alliance for Families is also part of your community. We have 22 parent mentors all over the state that can help you navigate the special education system. All of us are parents or close relatives who have someone with a disability, so know that when you come to us, you're not alone.
One of my favorite ways to work with parents is by doing IFSP or IEP reviews. This gives us a chance to really dig into your child's needs and your concerns and make sure that they are represented in the IEP and reflected in the goals. We need to know where we are now to know where we're going, right? It also gives us an opportunity to talk about the different communication approaches and what might work best for you and your team.
We can also help you understand programs and services, talk to you about eligibility and evaluation, accommodations and modifications, positive behavior intervention supports, and many more.
Yeah, on our website, there are multiple ways to find different information that you're looking for. We have the search bar at the top of the page. We have the great A to Z search list that you can find and use to search our website for specific topics that you might have, such as education law, financial resources, behavior, homeschooling, and many other options. And Chris just shared a link for your regional parent mentor, how to find them in your area. But our website has lots of different learning opportunities as well. Like I mentioned, IEP Closer Look, when I was discussing IEPs. There are also videos on our website on the videos tab that go in depth on different parts of the IEP and different topics as well, such as behavior and other things. You can sign up for the ones that you're interested in as far as the live learning opportunities right on our website. And then the videos, you can save them for later or watch them whenever you're ready because they're accessible when it's convenient for you. I did want to go back because I think there might be a little bit of a delay. When we were talking about the one pager, we had a few people share some great things in the chat. So I wanted to go over those. I know someone posted when they wanted their child to be in the Great Start Readiness program when she turned 4, they would sign up to volunteer in the school so that they did it a year ahead of time so that they could get to know the staff and the teachers, and she was able to bring her child. It gave them more opportunities to do this because their older child was in the class already, but they found that the Head Start was especially open to volunteers and visitors, and that she could bring her daughter with her. So they got to know the staff got to know her child. And while that may not be feasible because you might not have a child in that classroom, it is always an option to look at. Someone said that they think that the one pager, or the same person, sorry, they said that they think that the one pager was great, but finding those opportunities where they could take their child in seemed to help a lot because it gave them the physical connection as well. And then someone asked about Build Up Michigan. That is a website that is for those preschool age students that helps you find the services that are eligible. So it might be part of your transition plan. They build up as if you're not necessarily in early on, they can help you find services for your child. And if you guys would like, I'll put a link to the Build Up website in the chat.
Thanks, Victoria. Chris, could you bring us back to our resource guide slide, please? Just the next one. Thanks so much. So before we end our presentation, we just want to give a friendly reminder for you to please open that preschool with an IEP resource guide. This is something that you can save, and those links are interactive. This link was shared at the start of the presentation. We're sharing it again now, and it contains a wealth of resources that may be beneficial to your family when you're transitioning or early on to preschool. So in it, you can find more information on IFSPs, IEPs, different preschool settings, inclusion, what that actually looks like, the LRE, so Least Restrictive Environment, communication, dispute resolutions, advocacy, and then some important state and federal resources.
And don't forget, if you have any questions about any of those resources or anything that we discussed today, you can always reach out to the parent mentor that covers your district.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out to Michigan Alliance for Families for more information. As Chris said in the beginning, we have presence on the social media websites. We have our video library on YouTube. You can explore the website on your own independently. And we were really glad to help offer this information to you all and spend a little bit of time with you all getting to know the services that you're all inquiring about or getting. And we want to know if there's any questions that you might have regarding our presentation.
So I did have one question from earlier in the presentation, kind of a statement and a question together. And that was that this person thought that the least restrictive environment is not required until first grade because Michigan does not require preschool or kindergarten for kids in general. Do you have any comments or information about that?
So that is quite a gray area, if I'm being honest. If a school district offers preschool for their gen ed students, then I believe that they would have an obligation to have that be an option for their children who receive special education services. But I think that the best advice that I can give you is to discuss that with your regional parent mentor for more information.
Yeah, I agree with you, Victoria. It's a good idea to reach out to your private mentor and share any concerns you have, and they should be able to work with you and walk through some of those questions. Are there any other questions?
Since there's not preschool that is required in the state of Michigan, for me, that gets a little gray. So yeah. I would hate to give misinformation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we're going to be a little shy, I know some things that I came up with that I was thinking about at this time. You know, one of the things we really struggled with when we moved from early on to ECSE were just the logistics over a new location. So where was this classroom that my kiddo would be, and where would it be? I talked a little bit earlier about the transportation and how we did all this work to make sure she was ready for the bus. But then she's about to start school, we finally figure out the location in about a week, but I don't know the times. And, you know, I'm working, and we're talking about having her in a private daycare, and everyone's kind of wondering how she's going to have lunch and go to school. So that was a really tricky topic for us. And, you know, we reached out to the transportation team, and we reached out to the special education team, and we were able to figure out a plan before school started and make sure we were all on the same page. But sometimes, you know, it's important as a parent to take that initiative. And if you don't know the answer, don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you think might. Esmina talked a little bit about this in the communication and who those key players are. So if you do have questions, the special education director can help, even if it's during summer. You know, sometimes those questions do come up in summer. So what are we going to do? So don't be afraid to reach out, transportation team or whoever you think might know the answer, and us. You know, if you have a question you don't know where to go to for an answer, we're always here too. Victoria, is there anything you remember at that time?
So I'm going to cut in because we do have a couple questions that came in.
Oh, perfect. Thanks,
Chris. Real quick. So we the first question here, we have somebody that is just wanting to know how they get started in the process of getting their child an IEP. What steps should they take?
Kelsey, did you want to go ahead and answer that, or would you like one of us to cover it?
Yeah, sure. That's something I can talk about. If you are interested in an IEP for your student or your child, you're going to want to, you can always reach out to the parent mentor and they can provide you with some resources, but you want to make sure that you ask to have a comprehensive special education evaluation and that this is done in writing. So it's a little different dependent on I guess where you are, but you can always email the special education director for your local school district and request that comprehensive special education evaluation. It's also beneficial to include your concerns. If you're comfortable doing that, you don't have to, but include why you're requesting this and how you document those concerns and the timelines as to when the school should respond and all that. Those are all things that we can share with you and help walk you through, provide some documents. So please feel free to reach out to your parent mentor for more support on that too. Are there any other questions?
There are a couple other questions, but I know it sounds like a broken record, but I think that they're going to be best served by reaching out to those parent mentors and talking to those parent mentors about those questions. The parent mentors can spend more time and sit down with you and show you exactly everything about the questions you have. They can talk with you, go over them, and just have a lot more time to discuss those with you than we have in the webinar right now. It's a great resource and it's a free resource. So please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what they do and that's what they're there for.
Well, if there are no more questions directly related to our presentation, then we're going to let you all go. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please remember that we're here for you if you need us. You can contact us in many different ways.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So I want to thank our presenters today. We really appreciate it. Esmina, Kelsey, and Victoria, we appreciate your time and appreciate the presentation you gave. On the slide here, it shows you how to get a hold of us. I know there were some questions about who is my mentor, where do I find my mentor for my area. If you go back to the regions that I showed earlier on the website, you can go to that interactive map and actually just click right where you live. That'll take you right to that parent mentor that covers your area. You can also call the 800 number, like I said, at the top of that website, and that will also directly take you to that parent mentor when you call. So any kind of any links that you follow here, you'll end up with your parent mentor that covers your part of the state. So there's no worries there. You will get in touch with that person directly. Like I said, I want to thank the three for the presentation today. If you still have any questions, like I said, reach out to those parent mentors. That's what they're there for. Remember to follow us on social media. Please take a moment to fill out that survey that I posted in the chat. That's really important for us. Like I said, we're grant funded and we do have to report back. That allows us to do that. We really appreciate you filling that out for us. Michigan Alliance for Families is a grant-funded initiative of the Michigan Department of Education, Office of Special Education, and Michigan's Federal Parent Training and Information Center, funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.
You fill out that survey.